Part 1. The Arrival. The path appeared when you needed it most. It was not a dramatic revelation. No parting of clouds, no sudden beam of celestial light. Instead, it simply was, as though it had always been waiting just beyond the edge of your awareness. A narrow trail of smooth river stones, each one worn to silk by centuries of patient water, wound through tall grasses that swayed in a breeze you could feel but not hear. The air held the weight of late afternoon honey, golden and slow, and somewhere in the distance, wind chimes made of driftwood sang their wooden song. You had been walking for some time, though time itself seemed to have loosened its grip here. Minutes stretched like taffy, sweet and warm. Your footsteps made only the softest whisper against the stones, a gentle shh, shh, shh that felt less like sound and more like the earth itself breathing beneath you. The world you had left behind, the one of sharp edges and hurried voices, of screens that glowed with urgency and clocks that ticked with accusation, felt impossibly distant now. It had not disappeared so much as dissolved, like sugar in warm tea, leaving only a faint memory of sweetness and no bitterness at all. Ahead, the valley opened like a secret being shared. Rolling hills covered in wildflowers stretched in every direction, their colors soft and dreamlike. Lavender that seemed to hold twilight within its petals, buttercups that glowed as if lit from within, wild roses in shades of peach and cream that reminded you of sunsets painted by someone who loved the world very much. The flowers moved in waves, responding to the wind currents you couldn't quite feel, creating patterns that looked almost like breathing. And there, nestled in the embrace of two gentle hills, sat the village. It was small, perhaps 20 cottages in all, each one built from materials that seemed to have grown rather than been constructed. Stone walls, the color of morning mist, thatched roofs, thick with moss, that glowed faintly green in the slanting light, windows that caught the sun and held it, radiating warmth even from a distance. Smoke curled from several chimneys, rising in lazy spirals that seemed in no hurry to reach the sky. The village was called Lumenvale, though you didn't know this yet. You would learn it later, from Iris, the woman who would become your guide, your friend, your gentle companion through this healing time. But for now, it was simply a place that felt like an exhale after holding your breath for too long. As you drew closer, you noticed the lights. They floated between the cottages like living things, soft orbs of luminescence in shades of amber, pearl, softest blue, and palest green. They drifted on invisible currents, sometimes clustering together like old friends in conversation, sometimes wandering alone with what seemed like peaceful purpose. Fireflies, you thought at first, but no, these were something else, something gentler. They cast no harsh shadows, created no glare. Instead, they seemed to soften the world around them, as if their very presence was a form of kindness. The first cottage you approached had a door painted the color of sage leaves, weathered and beautiful. A small garden grew in wild abundance beside it, chamomile and lavender, mint and lemon balm, plants that released their perfume into the evening air like offerings. The scent wrapped around you, and without meaning to, you breathed more deeply, feeling something tight in your chest begin to unfurl like a fern in spring. The door opened before you could knock. She was older than you, but younger than ancient, with silver hair that fell in waves past her shoulders and eyes, the color of morning sky, reflected in still water. She wore layers of soft fabric, in shades of cream and dove gray. And when she smiled, it was the kind of smile that holds no questions, no demands, no expectations, only welcome. Hello, dear one, she said, and her voice was like honey drizzled over warm bread. I'm Iris. We've been waiting for you. You have. The words felt strange in your mouth, rusty from disuse. The valley calls to those who need it, Iris said simply, stepping back to let you enter. And you've answered. That's all that matters now. Come in. You must be tired. Let's get you settled. The interior of the cottage was everything the exterior had promised. Low-beamed ceilings hung with dried herbs and flowers, a fireplace with actual flames dancing behind glass, throwing warm light across hand-woven rugs in patterns that seemed to tell stories without words. Cushions everywhere, in every shade of earth and sky, inviting you to sink down and stay a while. The air smelled of wood smoke and cinnamon, of bread baking somewhere out of sight, of tea steeping in clay pots. Sit anywhere you like, Iris said, moving toward a small kitchen area where copper kettles hung from iron hooks. I'll make us something warm. You chose a corner near the window, lowering yourself onto cushions, so soft they seemed to embrace you. Outside, the floating lights had multiplied as dusk deepened, creating constellations between the cottages. You watched them drift and dance, and something in their gentle movement began to ease the knots you'd been carrying in your shoulders, your jaw, your heart. Iris returned with 2 cups of tea that steamed fragrantly. She settled across from you with a grace that suggested she had all the time in the world and was happy to spend it here, with you, in this moment. Chamomile and honey, she said, with a touch of something special from the valley. It helps with the transition. Transition? You asked, accepting the cup, its warmth seeped into your palms. From the world outside to the world here, Iris explained, her eyes kind. It's not always easy, letting go of the pace you've been keeping. The valley moves differently, more slowly, more intentionally. The tea helps you settle into that rhythm. You sipped. The liquid was perfect, not too hot, sweet, but not cloying, with flavors that seemed to change with each taste. First honey, then something floral, then a warmth like sunlight, then a coolness like morning dew. It spread through your body like light through water, and you felt your breathing deepen, your heartbeat slow to a more peaceful tempo. How long can I stay? You asked, surprising yourself with the question. Iris smiled. As long as you need to. Some people stay a few days, some stay weeks, some come back year after year. The valley doesn't measure time the way the outside world does. Here we measure in healings, in gentle changes, in the softening of old wounds, and the growing of new strength. She set down her cup and looked at you with such understanding that you felt seen in a way you hadn't been in years. You've been carrying heavy things, she said softly. It wasn't a question. You nodded, not trusting your voice. The valley sees that, Iris continued. That's why the path appeared for you. That's why the lights guided you here. This place, it's a sanctuary for weary souls, a place to rest, to heal, to remember who you are beneath all the weight you've been carrying. Outside, full darkness had arrived, but it wasn't frightening. The floating lights illuminated the village in their gentle way, and through the window you could see other cottages glowing warmly, could imagine other people inside, also being held by this place, also being offered the gift of rest. Tomorrow, Iris said, I'll show you around properly, introduce you to some of the others, if you like, show you the places where the valley shares its particular magic. But tonight, you should rest. Your room is ready. It's been waiting for you. She led you down a short hallway to a small room that felt like being held inside a sigh of contentment. The bed was covered in quilts that looked handmade with patterns of stars and moons and growing things. The pillows were numerous and soft. A small window looked out onto the garden, and through it you could see the gentle lights floating among the herbs and flowers. Sleep as long as you need, Iris said from the doorway. Morning comes gently here. There's no rush. There's nowhere you need to be except here, healing at your own pace. After she left, you changed into the soft night clothes that had been laid out, loose cotton that felt like being wrapped in clouds, and climbed into the bed. It welcomed you like an old friend, the mattress just firm enough, the blankets just heavy enough, the pillows just soft enough. Everything was just right, as if the room itself had been learning your preferences while waiting for your arrival. Through the window, you watched the lights drift and glow and listened to the night sounds of the valley, the distant murmur of a stream, the soft rustle of leaves in trees you couldn't yet see, the occasional gentle hoot of an owl that sounded more like a lullaby than a hunting call. Your eyes grew heavy, and for the first time, in longer than you could remember, you weren't afraid of sleep. There were no anxieties waiting to pounce the moment you lowered your guard, no worries circling like sharks in dark water. There was only this: softness, warmth, safety, and the profound relief of finally being able to rest. As you drifted off, you could have sworn you heard the valley itself whisper, "Welcome home, welcome home, you're safe here," and you believed it. Part 2. Morning in the Valley of Gentle Lights. You woke to birdsong and golden light. It filtered through the small window in veils of amber and honey, pooling on the wooden floor in patches that seemed to glow from within. The birds weren't urgent or shrill. Their calls were melodic, conversational, as if they were sharing stories rather than marking territory or seeking mates. You lay still for a long moment, cocooned in quilts that smelled faintly of lavender, and simply listened. There was no alarm, no jolt of panic, no immediate mental list of tasks demanding attention. Just this: warmth, light, bird voices like flutes, and the profound luxury of waking naturally, your body deciding on its own that it had rested enough. A gentle knock came at your door. "I've brought breakfast," Iris's voice called softly. "But there's no hurry. I'll leave it outside your door if you'd like more time alone." "No, please," you said, your voice still rough with sleep, but somehow lighter than yesterday. "Come in." She entered, carrying a wooden tray laden with simple, beautiful food. Fresh bread, still warm from the oven, butter the color of cream, honey in a small clay pot, berries that looked like they'd been picked moments ago, their skins still holding morning dew. A pot of tea steamed gently, and the scent that rose from it was green and alive, something herbal and bright that made you think of new growth, of spring meadows, of beginning again. "Good morning," Iris said, setting the tray on a small table by the window. "You slept well." "I, yes," you replied, surprised by the truth of it. "Better than I have in years, I think." "The valley works quickly for those who need it most," Iris said with a smile. "Come, eat by the window. The morning light is particularly lovely today." You joined her, pulling a cushioned chair up to the small table. Outside, the valley was revealed in full daylight glory. The cottages looked even more charming now, their stone walls ranging from pearl gray to warm tan, their gardens spilling over with riotous abundance. Paths of white gravel wound between them, and you could see people moving about slowly, peacefully, carrying baskets or watering plants, or simply standing still, faces turned up to the sun. The floating lights were still visible even in daylight, though fainter now, like ghosts of stars that hadn't quite faded, or like the memory of last night's magic choosing to linger into day. They drifted above the gardens and between the houses, and sometimes one would pause near a person, hovering close as if offering a blessing or sharing a secret. What are they? You asked, biting into the bread. It was perfect, crusty outside, soft within, with a subtle sweetness that needed no butter, though you added it anyway. The lights? Iris poured tea for you both. We call them luminaries. They're, well, different people have different explanations. Some say they're manifestations of the valley's healing energy. Some say they're the spirits of peace, given visible form. Some think they're simply a natural phenomenon we don't fully understand. What do you think? You asked. Iris considered, wrapping her hands around her teacup. I think they're kindness, made visible. I think they're what the world looks like when you slow down enough to see its gentler truths. And I think they're drawn to people who need comfort, which is why there are so many here. You watched one drift past your window, so close you could see the way it pulsed softly, like a heartbeat of light. It paused, hovering near the glass, and you felt a wave of warmth that had nothing to do with the sun or the tea. A warmth that started in your chest and spread outward, telling you without words that you were welcome, you were seen, you were held. After breakfast, Iris said, would you like to walk? I can show you the valley properly. Or if you'd prefer more time to yourself, that's perfectly fine too. There's no schedule here, no obligations, only invitations. The old you, the you from before the path appeared, would have felt guilty about taking up her time, would have insisted on being independent, would have worried about being a burden. But something had already begun to shift in you, some old defense starting to soften, and so you simply said, I'd love to walk with you. Iris's smile was like sunrise. After breakfast, you dressed in the clothes you'd arrived in, but found they felt different now, looser, more comfortable, as if they'd been washed in the valley's gentleness overnight. When you emerged from your room, Iris was waiting by the door, in a flowing dress the color of mist, a woven basket over one arm. For gathering, if we find anything worth keeping, she explained, gesturing to the basket. The valley is generous with its gifts. She opened the sage green door, and you stepped out into the morning. The air was silk against your skin, warm but not hot, with a breeze that carried the scent of flowers and fresh grass and something else, something that smelled like possibilities, like open doors, like second chances. You took a deep breath, filling your lungs completely, and felt something old and stale finally exhale out of you. This way, Iris said, leading you down a path made of white stones that seemed to glow faintly in the sunlight. I'll show you the heart of the village first, then the outer places, the stream, the meadows, the forest edge. We'll take our time. That's the only way to truly see this place. As you walked, people emerged from cottages to tend their gardens, or hang washing, or simply sit in doorways with cups of tea. Each one smiled at you, not the polite, empty smile of strangers passing, but genuine warmth, as if your presence here was a gift to them somehow. An elderly man with a beard like white foam waved from a rocking chair. A young woman with flowers woven into her dark hair called out, "Welcome! The valley is lovelier for having you here." You weren't used to such open kindness. It made you want to cry and laugh at the same time. Everyone here, Iris explained as you walked, has come for healing of some kind. Some have stayed, choosing to make Lumenvale their home. Others visit when they need to, returning to the outside world when they're ready. There's no judgment either way. The valley doesn't ask for vows or promises, only that while you're here, you're open to receiving what it wants to give you. And what's that? You asked. Peace, Iris said simply. Rest. The chance to remember that the world can be gentle, that you deserve gentleness, that healing doesn't have to hurt. You walked through the center of the village, where a small square opened up around an ancient well. The well was made of honey-colored stone, worn smooth by countless hands, and water that looked crystal clear reflected the sky like a mirror. Around it, benches curved in a circle, and several people sat quietly, some reading, some with eyes closed, and faces turned toward the sun, some simply watching the luminaries float and dance overhead. This is the gathering place, Iris said. In the evenings, people come here to share stories or music, but mornings are usually quiet. It's a good place to sit and think, or to sit and not think, which is sometimes more important. A luminary drifted down from above, hovering between you and Iris, as if curious. Up close, you could see that it wasn't uniform. Its light swirled and shifted, with depths that suggested something vast contained in something small. It reminded you of looking into clear water and seeing stars. Hello, small friend, Iris murmured to it, and the luminary pulsed brighter for a moment before drifting away. You continued walking, leaving the village center and following a path that led between two of the rounded hills. The wildflowers here grew even more abundantly, creating carpets of color that seemed to shift as you moved, like looking at silk from different angles. Butterflies, with wings like stained glass, drifted from bloom to bloom, and bees hummed a song so deep and peaceful it felt like the earth itself was singing. May I ask, you said quietly, what brought you here? To Lumenvale? Iris was silent for a moment, but it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. She seemed to be sorting through memories, deciding which ones to share. I came 20 years ago, she finally said. I was younger than you, but I felt ancient, tired in a way that sleep couldn't touch. I'd spent so long being strong, being capable, being the one everyone leaned on, that I'd forgotten how to rest, forgotten how to ask for help, forgotten that I was allowed to be weary. She paused to touch a tall stalk of lavender, releasing its scent into the air. The path appeared for me one evening, when I'd walked myself into exhaustion. Trying to outrun thoughts I didn't want to think, I followed it here, expecting to stay a few days. But the valley, she smiled. The valley had other ideas. It kept offering me peace, and I kept accepting, and days became weeks, became months. Eventually, I realized I didn't want to leave. This was where I could be most myself, most useful, most rested, which I'd never understood was its own form of strength. Do you ever miss the outside world? You asked. Sometimes, Iris admitted. I miss certain people, certain places. But I've learned that you can love something and still need space from it. The valley taught me that, and the people I love understand. Some have even visited me here when they've needed their own healing. She looked at you with those kind, knowing eyes. But you asked, what brought me here? And I think the truest answer is this. I came here because I was tired of pretending I wasn't broken. The valley was the first place that looked at my brokenness and said, that's okay. Let's be gentle with that. Let's take our time with that. You don't have to be fixed by tomorrow or next week or even next year. You just have to be willing to heal at your own pace. Her words settled into you like seeds into good soil, and you felt them take root, beginning to grow into something you'd need later. The path led you over a gentle rise, and suddenly you could see it, the stream. It wound through the valley like a silver ribbon, catching light and throwing it back in dancing sparkles. Trees grew along its banks, willows that trailed their fingers in the current, silver birches that shimmered white against the green, and others you couldn't name, but that felt ancient and wise and protective. The sound of the water was everything you'd hoped, a constant murmur that wasn't quite words, but felt like conversation, like the earth telling you stories in a language older than human speech. Oh, you breathed, and Iris smiled. I know, she said. Come on, let's get closer.
Part 3. The singing stream and the whispering wood. Iris led you to a natural seating area on the banks of a clear stream, where flat stones met the water's edge. You slipped off your shoes and dipped your feet into the cool water. The current moved around your ankles, a touch that felt affectionate, as if it was carrying away not just dirt, but old sorrows and stale worries. Iris called it the singing stream, explaining that if you listened carefully, you could hear music like comfort in the water, not words. You closed your eyes and focused, eventually hearing an underlying harmony, notes that seemed to rise and fall in a pattern that served only beauty. During a moment of peaceful silence, you asked Iris, how do I keep this feeling, this peace, when I have to go back to everything that was making me tired? Trailing her fingers through the water, Iris replied, you can't bottle this peace and take it with you, but you can remember. You can remember that places like this exist, that peace is possible, that your mind and body know how to rest. When things get difficult again, you can remember the gentleness and rest you deserve here. Think of the valley, not as an escape, but as a reminder of what your life could include more of. You understood that healing was not a finished event, but a continuous practice of self-kindness. Next, Iris guided you deeper, toward the whispering wood. As you entered the thick grove of ancient trees, the light filtered down, creating an ancient and sacred atmosphere. You stopped and listened. Hearing the trees talking in the rustle of leaves and the sigh of wind, it sounded like wisdom being shared. The wood was filled with luminaries, appearing like stars in a visible galaxy. Iris explained, they gather here because the trees hold the valley's memory and have been offering comfort for centuries. As you walked, you began to feel something new, a sense of being held, not by physical arms, but by the wood itself. Suddenly overwhelmed, tears came, not sad tears, but releasing tears that carried away things you had held too long. As they fell, dozens of luminaries gathered around you, creating a sphere of gentle light that felt like being embraced by kindness itself. Iris simply stood by, letting you have what you needed. When the tears slowed, she asked, better, better. You agreed. You continued walking, surrounded by the ancient peace and the growing certainty that real healing, the kind that reaches down into your roots, was not only possible but already beginning. Part 4. The Meadow of Small Miracles. The whispering wood eventually loosened its hold, the trees spacing out gradually until you emerged into sudden brightness. Before you stretched a meadow so lovely it seemed impossible, like something from a painting or a dream that had decided to take physical form. Wildflowers covered every inch of visible ground in a riot of color that somehow never clashed, never overwhelmed. Each shade complemented the next. Purple lupins rising like flames, yellow buttercups pooling like melted sunshine, white daisies scattering like stars, red poppies swaying like hearts, and threading through it all, paths made of clover and soft grass that invited wandering, exploring, lying down, and becoming part of the beauty yourself. Oh, you breathed for the second time that day, and heard Iris's quiet laugh beside you. Yes, she agreed, everyone says that. The Meadow of Small Miracles tends to steal words away and replace them with wonder. Small miracles, you asked. Watch, Iris said. She stepped into the meadow, and immediately, butterflies rose from the flowers like living confetti. But these weren't ordinary butterflies, they were enormous, with wings that spanned the width of your hand, and their colors were impossibly vivid. Iridescent blues that shifted to purple to green depending on the angle of light. Oranges so pure they seemed to glow from within. Patterns that looked like eyes, like windows, like doorways to someplace magical. They circled Iris in a gentle spiral, and she laughed a sound of pure delight before gesturing for you to join her. You stepped forward, and the flowers seemed to lean toward you, their petals brushing your legs like affectionate cats. More butterflies rose, and this time they came to you, landing on your shoulders, your arms, your hair with touches so light they felt like whispers. Their wings moved slowly, creating small breezes that smelled like nectar and summer and joy. The meadow responds to presence, Iris explained, a blue butterfly perched on her finger like a jewel, to attention, to openness. The more you allow yourself to simply be here without trying to do anything or achieve anything or even understand anything, the more it shares with you. As if to demonstrate, she sat down right there among the flowers, cross-legged and relaxed, and the meadow seemed to embrace her. Flowers that had been bent away straightened to frame her face. The shimmer of butterflies created a moving canopy above her head, and the light itself seemed to soften, becoming even more golden, more forgiving, more kind. You joined her, lowering yourself carefully into the meadow. The ground beneath you was soft as a bed, cushioned by layers of clover and moss that formed a natural pillow. Immediately, you were surrounded by a subtle fragrance, flowers and earth, and growing things, and something sweeter, like hope smells if hope were a scent. Lying back, you looked up at the sky. It was the most perfect blue you'd ever seen, with clouds that drifted like thoughts and a peaceful mind, present but not intrusive, adding beauty without blocking the light. And above the clouds, barely visible in the daylight but definitely there, you could see luminaries. They floated in the upper air, like kites that had broken free, and discovered they didn't need strings after all.